business was growing rapidly for the Navy,
Yeah.
and they needed more space. So they decided that they were going to move out to western Pennsylvania. In Cleveland, Ohio, the Brush Development Company was working. And if you go in Cleveland and you say, who invented the electric light? Many people will tell you Charles Brush did, because he had arc lights in Cleveland before Edison had the incandescent lights. And the one thing that he had developed was they got in 2 plates of Rochelle salt, and they found out when they twisted it, they got a huge voltage. Now, the people who were running the company were not engineers, but they wanted to expand that business, and that's what they hired my father for. And the first thing he started getting involved with was to make a small loudspeaker that, instead of using magnetics, which is what most of them did, he made it with Rochelle salt. The idea was to make it for the automobile industry, where they'd be able to put these smaller loudspeakers in the car for the radios. And what you also have to understand, that this is the late 1930s. And even though we didn't actually get into World War II until 1941, England was at war and the rest of Europe were at war starting in the late 30s. The U.S. was very strongly supporting Britain. And we put together the Lend-Lease program, where we were sending them a lot of supplies, and those supplies were keeping them afloat. But what's happening is the Germans had a very effective weapon. They had invested heavily in submarines, and they invented the concept of the wolf pack to go after ships in convoy. And they were decimating our shipments. And so a lot of work was going on by the U.S. Navy to try to come up with ways of improving the ability to fight submarines. The government knew that eventually we were going to get pulled into the war, even though we technically weren't at war. And the first thing that the mobilization committee did was start saying, what are strategic materials? And would start to hold those and say that they can't be used for normal sales, because they're starting to stockpile them. And first it was the rare metals, and rare metals were the heart of magnets, and magnets were the heart of loudspeakers. But Brush Development Company was developing a loudspeaker that used Rochelle salt, not magnets. Suddenly the car companies all wanted, and other companies wanted, the speakers,
yeah,
because it's the only speaker that would work. And right at that time, my father got a phone call from a friend of his who was his counterpart at RCA, and they put him in charge of the Brooklyn Navy base. And the Brooklyn Navy base at that time had where sonar was. And sonar was in a very infant state at that time. Absolutely nothing had been done between World War I and World War II. He got a call from his friend who said, look, we're trying to protect the ships that are going across out of convoy. We had this idea of towing 2 lines behind the boat, and we were going to put a pound of TNT every 100 feet. And what we wanted was an underwater microphone, because the
term hydrophone didn't exist yet. Yeah.
And the idea was, if we had with each one of these an underwater microphone, and a torpedo was coming, it would hear the sound of the torpedo and blow the torpedo out of the water. But they're having a big problem.
Yeah.
We can't get it to work.
So grandfather said, hey, send me what you have and I'll take a look.
Then he got it and he looked at it.
He knew exactly what was going on.
And he found out that what they had done, they had it waterproof by putting in an air sac in the hose. So he went to his boss and said, the president of Brush, and said, hey, look, I got this call from my friend. It's a very simple thing. It's a totally wrong design. I can do this kind of quickly for him. And the guy said, no.
No way.
Frank, whatever you do, don't do anything for the Navy.
Ever.
Yeah. And he said, why? He said, look, we have this great business going. We're about to start selling all these new speakers. If you start working with the Navy and you make a mistake on the contract, then they will go and buy it from somebody else at a higher price, and the contract says you have to pay the difference, and it can put us out of business.
So grandfather went back to his house where he had the thing sitting there. He told his friend he was going to do something, so he decided on his own time to just fix it up, send it back to him, maybe he could use
Yeah.
it. And then time just goes on, and the sale for all those radios and things are going really, really well until,
The War Production Board stopped the production of vacuum tubes.
yep, to
And
everybody
that cut
in the commercial
all,
industry,
all
period.
the industry. So their
Right.
business went from
Kapooey.
huge to zero literally overnight.
And timing is sometimes everything, because it was right in that moment that my grandfather's friend called him back and said, "Hey, Frank, you know that thing you sent me? It works fantastic. We can pick up all of those charges. We could really use this."
Yeah. He kind of negotiated a $10 million contract.
On the phone.
On the phone.
Went back to his boss and said, "You know, right now we're looking at letting people go and you know, close up shop, or we could take this $10 million contract," which I just negotiated with the Navy. And this was 1940s dollars, so it was quite significant. And that's how brush development actually got into design, development, and production of sonars for the Navy throughout World War II. That became the main hub where all of the production for the new advances in sonars.